Good morning, students. My name is Maureen McCarthy, and I am the program director for the National Security Forum of Nevada. And I am thrilled to be here with you today with Dr. Tony Neubauer. Tony is the founder of the travel company Myth and Mountains and the fabulous nonprofit Read Global, which I'm sure she will give you a little bit about. Tony is talking to us today on the topic of when governments fail. And we're seeing this case play out real time right in front of our eyes, unfortunately, in Burma or Myanmar. So with that, Tony, share your thoughts on what's going on and how do we view this situation of a government in failure?
Well, first of all, Mingalaba, which is hello in Burmese. And let me say, you're visiting a country where if you went to the market and talked to some fruit seller a couple of years ago, probably about 5 years ago, about who was president of the United States, this fruit seller who had never been to school would say Obama. And I kind of looked, I said, what? I said, because we are Bamar people, and Obama and Bamar are the same word. So the majority group in Myanmar, Bamar, all knew the president of the United States. And I'll bet you a nickel, most of you have no clue who the prime minister of Burma was.
That's true.
But let me tell you, this is a magical, magical country where in some places people kiss by sniffing, where you have 8 days in a week, where the major currency for many, many years was based on 9. Have you ever tried to figure out what you're spending when it's based on 9? And the location of the present capital had been determined by an astrologer. It's a country of fairy tale pagodas in cotton candy colors of pink and blue that dot the landscape, where people cover their face with white powder from a tree called the Tanaka tree, and clouds and mist cast romantic hues all over the country. It still is a country in a time warp, isolated from the rest of the world for more than 30 years, probably more than that, and that just leapt into modernity, only to face at this moment a serious potential of return to isolation. It's the largest country in Southeast Asia. It's twice as large as Vietnam. It's approximately the size of Great Britain and France combined. It's a country with 135 nationalities, each with its own languages and dialects, and a population of about 55 million. Its history dates back before the time of Buddha in the 5th century BC. And leaping over that, because I would probably put you to sleep if I went through it, in the early 1800s, after a series of war, it became a British colony under the auspices, according to the British, of India, because they didn't think the Burmese could take care of themselves. An important fact is one looks at the history today, some of the feelings towards Rohingyas and everything else. During World War II, Myanmar suffered truly terribly, was totally decimated, and was occupied by the Japanese from 1942 until the Allies finally came back in 1945. And only in 1948 did it finally become a sovereign nation. Sadly, at that point, Aung San Suu Kyi's father, Aung San, never had the opportunity to see that because he was assassinated the year before. He had 6 members of his cabinet, and the first prime minister was a man by the name of U Nu. Myanmar also boasted one of the great heads of the United Nations, U Thant, somebody far before your time, I'm sure, but still very well known and very well respected. From the whole issue of military leadership in Burma is not at all new. This is something that's happened historically, and actually it goes back to the kings. There's a prayer where the Burmese people say, "Free us from the tyrants." That's part of their Burmese literature. So having dictators, having cruelty, having riots, this is nothing new. Probably the first of the modern tyrants could be considered General Ne Win. He abolished the federal system set up after World War II and independence, started the way to socialism, and essentially controlled the country until about 1981, though through his ruling socialist program. This period and the following periods saw minority groups, excuse me, mounting a series of guerrilla insurgencies against government repression. Insurgencies continue today, and in a way, Myanmar has one of the longest insurgent wars in the world that has been going on for years. You can also describe it, using our language, as a mixture of red and blue states. The center of the country are the red states. It's the heartland. It's the rice growing area. It's where the governments are. The blue states are the periphery, and they're the ethnic groups, which may not sound very interesting until you realize they control the natural gas, teak, rubies, jade, and of course, very lucrative, opium. And they have their own armies. So this is the mixture of the country and what forms a lot of the internal conflicts that go on. In 1988, after the death of about thousands of Burmese anti-government riots, SLORC, and if that name doesn't get you, nothing will, or the State Law and Order Restoration Council was formed and declared martial law. And basically, it imprisoned thousands of people. It put Aung San Suu Kyi under house arrest, and it dropped Myanmar back into the dark ages economically, and until 1990, she was under house arrest, and her party finally in 1990 won an election victory. Guess what? The military ignored it. It kept tight controls on the country, and from 2000 up until 2010, Myanmar was controlled by the military, isolated from the rest of the world, and went from being a country with incredible potential. It used to be one of the best rice-growing countries in all of Asia, to a country that was one of the poorest in Asia. Hoping to expand trade, to escape from some of the sanctions that were both keeping the country poor and forcing the government to rely on China as their primary trade partner. Thein Sein, who at that time was president, released the lady from house arrest. She announced her party would stand for election in 2012, and of course she and her candidates swept the board. So from 2012 until just recently, Myanmar experienced a taste of democracy with newspapers, with cell phones that went from $4,000 to $4 each, and a flurry of investment from abroad. Things looked bright for the country, and tourism flourished. Then in 2017 came the Rohingya crisis, sanctions once again imposed on the country, particularly by Western nations, forcing Myanmar back into the arms of China, cutting back drastically on tourism investment, and the military leaders decided they couldn't trust the West to expand economic opportunity in the country, and began to look inward again. Moreover, the military was worried it was going to lose power to the very popular National League for Democracy. And in February 2021, the NLD won a huge general election, badly beat pro-military candidates, and in terms that may sound familiar to some Americans, the army alleged voter fraud, overthrew the government, and Army Chief Min Aung Hlaing took over. So here we are now, 2 years or later.
Fantastic, Tony. That was a fabulous introduction, and that really gave a flavor for a very quick history of how we got there. Notice I said when governments fail. I didn't say when nations or people fail. So I'm looking forward to your discussion with the students. I believe we have you on for Tuesday and Thursday at 10 o'clock.
That's what I think.
Right, yes.
Next week.
Tuesday and Thursday at 10 o'clock, you'll be able to have a discussion with Tony directly. Students, come join us. I think this will be a stimulating discussion. Thank you very much, Tony.